Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Lean Coaching for Lean Coaches. So happy to have you here. We are midway through the month of May in the Pacific Northwest of the US. This is springtime, and as you can see outside, the sun is shining. It is going to be 77 degrees Fahrenheit here today. I don't know quite the conversion to Celsius, but it's going to be a beautiful spring day here and excited for what's ahead today. And as always, we're going to be talking to a lean coach and helping them move through, get some clarity in a next action step. And if you're in that space right now as a lean practitioner, you're looking to start your own gig and you're having some challenges getting that clarity and moving forward, you feel stuck. That is my jam. That is what I do. That has been my journey and where I love to help take folks. So please shoot me a DM. Let's sit down. Let's have a conversation and help you move through that challenge and frustration and find that clarity and movement forward. Without further ado, though, let's bring on our guest for the day. I don't even necessarily like the guest. We're having a conversation and helping provide clarity and action. He is a lean coach, a lean practitioner, and it's Alex Devereux. So glad to have you here today, Alex. If I had the clap machine, I'd bring it on right now. Maybe someday I'll be that modern and fantastic. We can have the virtual clapping as folks start coming into the room. But thanks for hopping in.
No worries. Thank you for having me, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as folks kind of start coming into this space, why don't you just share a little bit about what you're up to these days? How you know, like, what's your association with lean and your practice and whatnot? Would love to hear.
Okay, so I've only been kind of practicing like lean as a continuous improvement manager for about a year and a half, kind of officially in that role. Though I've kind of dabbled in lean at various other roles that I've done in the past, and so this is my second role at a second company in this job, and it's kind of my job is like very strategic at the moment. So I'm supposed to be less hands-on doing, and more understanding what the strategy is for the organization and helping others to take more action. So giving them clarity on the stuff that we need to then start doing, and then also help them with the process of doing it. So I don't, for the first time in probably about eight or 9 years, I don't have any direct reports. So I'm an individual contributor, which is also quite new, and brings up its own challenges. And yeah, some of the stuff that I'm finding hard within that transition is because I don't have anyone that reports to me, I have to do a lot of influencing, and sometimes it's things don't quite have as much pace as I would perhaps like. But again, it's not easy because I only see part of the story, right? I don't, because I'm not in control of people's day-to-day activities. It's a little bit harder to kind of slot into somewhere when everyone is always, as we all are, busy all the time.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting, I can imagine, transition, and I'm sure folks, as you're coming in, please, if you can relate to this story that Alex is talking about, coming from that place of being a performer and a doer to being an influencer, right, and the strategy and all of that, I think is something that a lot of folks, as we go along on our journey and you're growing and you're learning, you're going to be moving into places where you maybe have less direct influence over people and more like high level. So how do you navigate that? So what are you finding? I mean, you shared a few of the challenges. What are the things that are you're really dealing with, especially right now, that are causing you the most challenge?
Well, so I guess a bit of kind of background on where I've come into the role. The company I'm working at installed a new machine last year. Isn't quite performing to the standard that we would like, and since I've been there, I've been in role about 3 months. We've not seen a performance increase pretty much at all, and it's kind of that. I've spent a long time looking at the data, and one of the great things about the business where I'm currently working is that we have data for everything, which as I kind of mentioned before, is a bit like a double-edged sword, where we can have, I think I have like 50 data points on the machine's performance at my fingertips, and I always thought that's what I was missing before, was I just don't have enough data. And now that I have enough data, it's too much data. and
Yeah.
finding it very easy to kind of go down the rabbit hole and try and look for answers in the data when actually the data is, it gives you a direction, doesn't give you detail, if that makes sense. Because
Yep.
the data will tell me that a machine is down for 3 hours a day, won't necessarily tell me exactly why. And I had a bit of an epiphany while I was on my weekend last weekend, that actually I need to now stop looking at the data. I've actually spent way too long looking at the data, maybe like 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks, if I'm being honest with myself. Too long looking at the data, and it's time now to then actually just go and do. And as I kind of mentioned, I've been because my role is supposed to be predominantly strategy based and predominantly getting other people to do, clarity to do actions. I've been holding off doing some of the stuff because I'm again trying to navigate this bit where, am I supposed to go down on the machine and spend the whole day there watching it to gain that clarity, or do I need to be influencing other people to kind of take the steps? And today I cleared my calendar because I wasn't getting the answers that I needed from the data points that I was able to get. So I cleared my calendar completely, and I spent a whole day down with the team on the machine to try and really get that clarity. And the great thing is that I picked up on something while I was down there, not just from speaking to the operators, but something that I've seen. I watched them do this thing probably 6 times. This thing happened, and it may not sound like that much because it was down maybe for like 2 minutes at a time. But if you've got six occasions at 2 minutes long over a 2-hour period, that's 10% of your time is gone. And because it's so small, no one really pays attention to those things. But if you have multiples of these things happening, all of a sudden you lose so much performance, and no one really knows why. So today was really good, and I guess I only really got that one big thing out of today. But now because I've gathered that data, because that again, that's me doing something, but it's also more data gathering. I can then speak to the engineering team, I can speak to the area leaders, I can speak to the operators and say, this thing I noticed today, we can do something about this because it's very specific. I know when it happened, I know where it happened, I know how much time we lost, and what the impact of this of not doing something is. And actually, even though this thing may happen, maybe once a week in like a big block, that's still time that we've lost. So so it was a really productive day in that sense, to really go from looking at the data, understanding that it's kind of the little stuff that we really don't understand what's happening, to getting some real life data like on the line with the team. And I suppose my slight frustration for myself is that I know that data only gets you so far, and
Yeah.
yet every time I go somewhere new or start a new role, I seem to spend ages looking at the data to then finally just go, I just need to do what I've always done and go back to the line, because that's like the basics, if that makes sense. So
Yep.
yeah, some of the stuff I'm looking at is high level strategy, like we need to install this machine or we need to improve performance here. And then some of the stuff, I guess, is that detail of specifically we need to look at this little thing on the machine because this is what's causing us the downtime. And yeah, sometimes struggling to navigate between the really high level visionary stuff, strategy stuff, and the nitty gritty finer detail, because I can't do my job without both. But yeah.
What do you find is the hardest part of navigating that, kind of going between like you said, the high level strategy and
Yeah.
then the nitty gritty? What's the hard part in that for
So
you?
I think for me, the challenge is being careful to not spend too long on one thing, because if I spend too much time on the high level stuff, I just miss all the detail. But then if I spend too much time on the detail, and I don't lift my head up enough to look at the kind of long-term strategy, then I end up diving into the detail and spending, again, like you're just losing myself in the detail. So it's a really, for me, it's almost like if I had a way of understanding, or understanding when I need to make the transition from broad to fine
Yeah.
much more quickly. Because what I feel happens is I kind of hit a brick wall with one, and I go, right, now's time to go into the detail, and then I spend
Yeah,
ages
yeah.
in the detail, and it's not until I've spent probably an extra 5 days in each camp where I've it's almost like it takes me a long time to understand where the law of diminishing returns happens.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's almost that if I had this thing in my head, this trigger that said you've definitely spent enough time on here, and this is the point where if you spend any more time, it's just going to be broadly wasted. Then I could save myself more time and get more things done. Yeah, and then I guess on the other thing that's the kind of challenging is that piece that I kind of alluded to at the start, which was I'm an influencer now. I don't have anyone that reports to me, so it's there's a level of internal frustration because it's like I feel like I could maybe do things if I was doing things on my own. I could do them much faster potentially,
Right.
but that's not the point. The point is that if I can bring everyone else up to 80%, that's way more than me being at 100, if that makes sense. So it's those are kind of probably my two main challenges: is the really understanding at what point I just need to pivot and go from granular to broad and then back again,
Yeah.
and then also how to really make sure that when in kind of that influencing piece, that stuff still gets done, because it is important, but the people don't report directly to me. So there's like an element of, as I said, of like influencing there where stuff just doesn't sometimes get done.
Yes, it's those are both challenges. I think folks that are in a role like yours, like like a CI leader or manager role, and both of those challenges, I'm sure folks can relate to. And if you can, please drop in the comments. Would love to hear what your experience is with that. I'm wondering for you, which one takes up your most headspace right now in this season? The granular and broad kind of challenge, or your influencing challenge right now?
Probably the influencing side, because I've got to the point where I know what we need to do, and it's just a case of doing it. But that's a huge influencing piece, and it's and with some people it's been really successful, where I've introduced what we need to do. They've kicked off a team and they're just running with it and they're doing super well. And every time we check in, they're just like, "Yep, done this action, done this action, done this action," and they basically don't really need me. And then some other people, they say they might not need me, but actually then when we do sit down, like the actions haven't gotten done. And again, it's that, it's part of that as a challenge for me, because I would like to get more done. I would like to help more, but if I don't know how I can help, then I almost feel like I'm waiting for someone else to come in and say stuff hasn't gotten done. What are we doing? And I'm like, well, I'm kind of trying, but I'm just not getting traction sometimes. So
it's definitely a tension there as well. What, like, with this influencing side of life, what feels like kind of your ideal scenario for you in this? Because it sounds like, I feel like when we get to these points, we have like an unsaid picture in our head of how we'd love things to be going, but we just don't name it because for whatever reason we're afraid or whatever might be getting in the way. But what's that ideal picture as best as you can articulate it?
I think for me it's having a really good, clear two-way communication. That if I sit down with someone and we go through the action steps and stuff that has to happen, that we can have an open conversation where if it's just not possible and they've got other things that are conflicting or whatever else, just to let me know, because then that means that I can then do something with that information. Whereas if I hear nothing for a month, let's say, between kind of like meetings, and we sit down and nothing's happened, and I'm kind of like, well, if you'd have told me 2 or 3 weeks ago, we could have done different things. We could have re-strategized. I could have helped out, whatever. And so it's that I would like there to be potentially clearer communication, but at the same time, I'm, I guess, getting into my own internal kind of fears here. What I don't want is to be absolutely hounding someone, because after a while, when you just hound someone, then they're just like, well, who needs to tell me what to do? Like, you're always on my back about this stuff. I'm just not going to listen anymore. So again, it's really that it feels like a tightrope sometimes, where and at what point do I need to escalate to someone else to say, look, this isn't happening, and maybe that's what I need to be doing is bringing in some outside help from either their manager or whatever else to really try and get some actions down. Or just find a way to open that really clear conversation that if because what I don't want to do is just sit in front of someone, discuss actions. It feels like having a conversation and they're nodding, but internally they're like, yeah, this isn't going to happen, I can't do this, but I don't feel comfortable telling you that. Then I guess how do I get more of that positive communication and make sure that people are, how do I open up that communication where they feel comfortable to say, this is, with the best will in the world, this isn't going to happen, or it's not going to happen, or it could happen, but I need this, and this to happen. Because again, because part of my role is very much like removing roadblocks for people. And if I don't know there's a roadblock, it might affect it. So I would love to have those conversations with people where they say, this is all great. Either it's all great, let's do it, or I understand, but I've got roadblocks, or I don't understand and I have roadblocks. Almost that feedback of, tell me how you're feeling, tell me what I can do. Because for me, it's if someone says yes, then I take that as that is fine. But if they say no, I've got roadblocks, again, it's all information. But if they say yes, but it means no, what am I supposed to do with that? So it's how do I is there a way, and it may be stuff that I'm doing or not doing, that when I sit down with someone, we really have that clear communication that if there is something that I'm saying that either doesn't make sense or that or where there are roadblocks, then that's what we need to discuss, are the roadblocks, because I can then use I can potentially influence others and try and reprioritize and do things to remove the roadblocks so we can then get more things done.
I think it's I really appreciate, first just want to say, appreciate how you have framed what you do want and what you don't want. And I love that in terms of like when we're having a conversation, especially if it's a hard one. This is what I do want, this is what I don't want, and being like super clear about that. Whether it's with our partner, with our kid, with a coworker, when there's challenging conversations, being clear about that. My wonder is overall, with I don't know how many different teams you're supporting right now individually, but the leaders or the people that you're having these conversations with, do you feel like there's a clear I don't like the yes or no, but what sorts of expectations, I guess, like, for lack of a better, what's the current understanding, current condition? What's the current, do you feel like there's a clear expectation or understanding or communication or clear expectation of what that communication is between you and those people?
I'm not sure if I understand the question, Sam. Could you potentially rephrase it or
Yeah,
say it again?
sure. So you've said that when you walk into these conversations, you want there to be a, like, hey, how are things going, or hey, these are the things that you're gonna be working on, and they say yes or no, and you're not, and then maybe a few weeks later things aren't getting done, or maybe more is getting done, or medium's getting done. Do you
Yeah.
feel like when people say yes, like, or no, do you feel like there's like a clear communication going on? What is the expectation in those conversations? Do you feel like, I guess it's kind of a twofold. Do people feel safe in the conversation to say that? And then what's the expectation when you have those like conversations? Does that clarify?
I, I think so, yes. So I guess you're right. Maybe people don't feel comfortable because again, I've only been at the company for about 3 months. So there's, I'm still maybe like the new guy. And
Yeah.
there might be, you're right. There might be an element of that at the moment, my relationship feels more transactional because maybe they only see me for these little snippets in, various times. And it's very much, these are some actions that, it feels maybe one way, whereas maybe there needs to be an element of kind of stepping back and having fewer, like, doing more work on the less transactional elements than I currently have been doing, if that makes sense.
when you say, I think I understand what you're saying, but maybe you
Yeah.
could be more like direct about what you mean.
So
When you say
so
like transactional versus relational.
yeah, yeah. So have so how perhaps to really get that communication, that I've not built up enough, what do you want to call it, trust, or enough kind of good faith that they feel comfortable having those conversations, because the relationship I have with some people might be more transactional than anything else. And actually, I need to, rather than be, and maybe that's something that I have always struggled with, because I'm very action orientated and I'm an engineer by background. So,
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
very comfortable with equations, specifics, let's get this done, like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. And maybe there's an emotional side of things that I'm missing, that I'm not spending enough time focused on that, because I'm trying to spend so much time focusing on doing and taking action, rather than rather than actually focusing on rapport while also focusing on the transactional stuff, if that makes sense. So maybe there is an element of that.
Yeah. And thank you, Brent, for hopping in here too on yeah, and I think some of this kind of dives into that, taking a step back and understanding um,
Mm.
the relationships, right? You're talking about Brent. You're talking about
Yeah.
like tiered, and to me, that's like those relationships and where you're at with those relationships and what those look like. Stepping back and understanding and engagement and inspiration and establishing a system. So there's definitely some relational pieces there. What do you feel like as you're thinking about that relationship building? Um, what keeps you from diving into that? Maybe a little bit more.
I guess it feels like a lot of people are very busy a lot of the time, and
Mm,
so sometimes when I do go and see them at the Gemba, they're just so busy that they're again, they're kind of like running around, like doing stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And it's hard to kind of like, and again, I feel sometimes awkward if someone's clearly very, very busy doing something.
yeah,
It's sometimes difficult to kind of jump in and be like, can we just have a 5 minute conversation? Because in their mind, they're just like, no, they're in, like, maybe
yeah,
they're stressed, maybe they've got a lot on and they're just in doing mode. But then
yep.
that means, as I said, that when we do sit down, when I do book some time in, that they then come, you know you know it's it's great that I've got that time. So I'm trying to make the most of that time from a let's get
Yes.
stuff done perspective, and perhaps don't spend enough time on the whole, you know. And in fact, what I maybe am missing is that I should potentially book time in with them, rather than doing stuff that I'm focused on. Is actually go down and be like, right, you're clearly very busy, but I want to spend this hour with you in your area, helping you solve problems for your stuff. And then I guess that builds goodwill and builds trust, and you spend that time in the relation, because then it's not just one way. It's not just I'm coming to ask you to do more work. It's I'm going to come down and actively serve you. And maybe that's the bit that I've been not been doing as much as I could have done, is more, service to others, rather than focused on the kind of like,
Mm,
you know, yeah.
mm. How did what would that look like for you to do? Like if you were to walk away from here, what would you go do in the next, I don't know, in the next day? Obviously your day's wrapped up for today,
Yeah.
but as you walk into in tomorrow, what would that look like for you to do
I think so. What I would do actually is I would go to um, I would go to the morning meetings where we discuss performance from the previous day, and stuff that's happening actively today, so on the day. And if someone is struggling in an area, then volunteer to go and walk the process with them, understand it with them. And even if it's stuff that doesn't necessarily like come into my radar where I'd normally be sitting, it's like, actually, you know I I'm there. And I guess because it feels then more that we're then problem solving together. They're not alone, I'm not alone. And when you work on stuff together, you end up building rapport, building a relationship, building trust. And ultimately, if I can help them solve a handful of problems, that and also at the time, that's when they're the most focused on it. If they've got a problem now, then they're the most focused on it. And if
Yes.
I've said to them, I'm going to come with you we're both going to leave this meeting and immediately go down and see what we can do about this problem, then there's a level of focus there where we both agreed that this is the communication, this is why we're both here, this is what we're going to look at. Whereas
Yeah.
if I go down at some random point, then it's, they're already in flow doing something, and I'm actually like coming in as a bit of an incumbent. I'm like disturbing that flow. Whereas,
Yeah.
if someone's basically making a bid for connection or a bid for asking for help, to be the
Yep.
person to say, you know what, I'll help you, because
Yes.
and actually, so that's what I would do. I need to make sure that I allocate time in my day to do that, to be at the Gemba with people in service of them, rather than always looking at kind of like the bigger picture of the strategy stuff, because then you get to learn. I guess I would learn more about them as individuals, and I would also learn more about some of their development needs and things like that. And it's done in a more organic way than me sitting down with them in a one-to-one meeting away from the Gemba or whatever else. Even though in my mind I was thinking that was potentially the least stressful place to have them, but actually the best place might just be side by side facing an issue together, if that makes sense. That's like live, that's happening right now. I guess a bit like what you're doing with me, right? You're doing some coaching now with me on some problems that I have today, not stuff that I've had like 3 months ago, whatever else. And
Right.
and then like this is the time where it's like it's peak in terms of my focus, or peak on my radar. And that's the time to kind of like make sure that I'm coming in to give them a hand.
So what's your next step then when you walk in tomorrow? What are you going to do? So we talked about some theory, like what are you going to do?
So specifically, I'm going to go to the morning meeting with the intention of coming away with an action to either meet someone immediately afterwards or on that day to go and help them with an issue that they're actively having.
And I like Brent, what you're saying here. What's the problem they're trying to solve? Getting understanding, and grabbing a Coke. Like, hey, you know what? Let's having a conversation. And I love my favorite thing to do with my clients is I just start like the first 5 minutes of my conversations are my intention is just to catch up on the week, right? Like, how are things going, and how are the kids, and did you go to a concert? And what about that game the other? Like, those little micro things really are what build that trust for me in my view. So, and similarly, like you're going to understand them, right? And so this is really, really great. What do you expect from that intention?
Well, I'm really I guess I'm hoping that it will help break down some barriers, for sure, because because I think maybe as I alluded to earlier in the call, I spent so much time looking at data, but that's data, like that's not at the Gemba. That's a way that's poring over numbers over spreadsheets and whatever else. So even though I've been there for 3 months, I've not necessarily spent a lot of time one-on-one with some people, because so now that I've kind of done the whole bigger picture stuff, and now I need to get into the detail. I need to also focus on the relationships that I need to build as well in order to make more things happen and help more people, if that makes sense.
Well, we talk about in Lean continuous improvement, respect for people, and it seems to me like you've got a good head on your shoulders and you understand that. And now it's just, okay, we know about those things. Now we just got to go actually practice it and do it. And you're a doer, so you know how to do that. Now it's just like, okay, maybe stepping into some of those uncomfortable spaces, maybe not, and actually engaging with them. Now, in like the last 1 minute, what was the most valuable part of this conversation for you today?
So for me, it was, I mean, the bit that you helped me get to is like the specifics, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. We're all super busy, but actually just asking questions because I don't often, because I'm so busy doing, I don't often spend time just reflecting. And part of that, just this space forces me just to sit and reflect, because we're one-on-one. I don't have anything else that's kind of like, distracting me or whatever. And so it's an opportunity to really just stop and reflect. And I should probably spend some time of that, every day, maybe 10, 15 minutes asking myself some of these questions. What went well today? What didn't go well? What do I need to do? And just taking that time. Whereas from the moment I wake up to the moment I get home, I'm like, my brain is just switched on. and I'm just in do mode.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that that helped surface that. It's very interesting. This is a conversation I have with a number of my clients. This is
Mm,
a struggle. Like they're very much doers and executors, and even though they love people, they understand that
mm.
this reflection part, like even adding it in as standard work. I know one of my clients has it, and they'll like see the red on that part. So even though we have the intention, it's the okay. I need to actually set that time aside and actually, do it,
Yes.
add it to our practice. So I'm really excited to hear how this goes as you step into this space. You take this time to go down, be with the people, and build that rapport, and then see what happens as you
Yeah.
continue to do that. And if this is the kind of support for those here, and thank you, Brent, for all of your dropping in all of your comments. You've added so much great stuff here. And for
Mm.
those that have been here with us today, um, if that's the kind of support you could use, please reach out. Let's have a conversation. And Alex, thanks for opening up, sharing
No
your
worries.
challenges and what's going on for you. And of course, please connect with Alex and have some more great conversations like these. So thanks again, everybody. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about in our audio room the idea of follow up. If you're looking to build a brand, build a business, how do you use follow up on LinkedIn to really start? Building relationships and folks that you could support in as a client. So come on Thursday ready to engage in that conversation. And once again, thanks, Alex, for being here today. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic Tuesday, and we'll talk again soon.